Well, here we go again, another Saint Seiya mythology video. But this time we're not doing characters. You had the idea of doing weapons.
Oh yeah. The weapons in Saint Seiya have a huge background in mythology, and they interpret it in some really unique and cool ways.
That is indeed true. Even though weapons are fairly rare overall, almost every Olympian in the series does have at least one.
hmm
Yes. Now I've gotten all the ones that I know of officially. I decided to limit it to Olympians because if I did every Greek god, this would be pretty long.
Yeah.
So let's start with Athena. Is there any mythological importance to, well, first, gold, because gold seems to be very important.
Okay, well, gold is actually really interesting because in Greek mythology, gold was considered the most precious metal. Because back when they were living, in Greece during that time, there's not a lot of gold around there. It was the brightest, the shiniest metal, the most rare metal, and that continues on to this day. Like, even today, we still consider gold one of the most precious metals, despite the fact that platinum and other metals are rare and cost more. People still think about gold because of that historical connection.
Very rare, very pretty. So pretty much the redheads of materials.
Exactly.
And the first gold weapon is the Golden Dagger of Athena.
hmm So this one is actually pretty unique because in Greek mythology, there were certain weapons that could kill gods. I'm
Really?
thinking the golden dagger. Yeah. There's a bunch of them. There was Kronos' scythe. Just a lot of. There was Kronos' scythe, Zeus' thunderbolts. Just a lot of them, right?
Yes.
But I'm thinking when it comes to this specific one,
Hmm?
I think it. I think um what they did was they took one of Athena's weapons from mythology and split into two parts. They took her spear,
Hmm.
which she was born with, and they separated into two distinct parts: the staff of Nike and the golden dagger. Now, this is just my personal theory, though.
Oh yes, it makes sense. But it's interesting to learn that there are multiple weapons that can kill gods because it's usually thought of that Greek gods were pretty much unkillable.
Well, it's a weird thing because, for example, Uranus, it is a they're not very clear whether Kronos killed him with the scythe or if the scythe's power was that it hurt him so badly he couldn't regenerate.
Hmm.
So he's still alive and conscious, but he's just separated. Same thing with Zeus's thunderbolts. They're able to defeat them, but it's not clear if they're still alive or not. It's one of those things where some myths that, oh yes, they're very dead. Other myths are like, no, because they're eternal gods, they can't die. So it just depends on who you ask.
So basically interpretation.
Yes.
And as far as Saint Seiya goes, divine weapons are pretty much the only way to truly kill a god. Well, to
hmm
kill a god, the golden dagger is pretty much the way to permanently kill one. Is how it is
Yep.
displayed. And then we have, this is probably a long one.
Mhm.
The golden scepter, Nike.
Yes, the Golden Scepter of Nike. This is actually the one I was really most excited about to talk
Oh, I
about
bet there's a lot there.
because it is not just for one, Nike is of course the goddess of victory, and she is stated to always be by Athena's side because Athena is the goddess of
Mhm.
warfare, and but specifically tactical warfare, unlike Ares, who is unbridled in chaotic warfare. Now, the staff itself, as I mentioned before, appears to be an adaptation of Athena's spear, which in Greek mythology was a spear that promised victory to whoever Athena
Mhm.
supported. It was this spear that wounded Ares and caused him to flee from battle. It was this spear that created the olive tree that gave Athens its name. It was this spear that's basically her big weapon of power. So what I believe with what Saint Seiya did was they took this spear, and they broke it into two parts. They broke into the staff to represent Athena's peaceful and kind nature, and the dagger, which represented her warlike nature and her ability to kill gods.
Wonderful. So, really, probably more so in the Greek myth, she basically has a auto win weapon
Yeah,
and an
pretty
auto
much.
kill lesser god by her side.
Yep. A lot of things. Athena was given a lot of things. Oh, actually, she actually has a third weapon, which I'm sure we'll talk
Mhm.
about. But she was given all these powers and abilities because, as the daughter of Zeus, and as Zeus's favorite child, he gifted her many gifts he did not give to his other children,
I,
of which he had many.
I was about to say that, yes, this is probably due to her being the favorite of
Yeah.
Zeus's kid. Is, where is she in terms of age? Is she the youngest? The
That's
oldest, technically?
no,
There we
no.
go.
She's the okay. So it's kind of weird because she is the child of Zeus's first wife, but she wasn't born until after, I believe, Aphrodite
Hmm.
and Ares, because thanks to Zeus absorbing her mother, it took her a while to be physically born because Zeus absorbed her mother, so she had to spring fully grown out of his head. Greek mythology is weird, people.
Absolutely. Now, I do have Athena's shield, but I
Yes,
probably actually should mention the the armor, I think it's called the Armor of Athena in Saint Seiya, or Cloth of Athena,
yeah.
which I mentioned because she was born in armor, correct?
She was. She was born completely fully grown, already wielding her spear and wearing her armor. This armor is supposed to represent um her warrior nature because, as we mentioned before, Athena is the goddess of war of tactical warfare, strategy, battle tactics, all the fun parts of war.
Yes.
Whereas Ares is the god of unbridled destruction, chaos, and all the bad things that come from war.
Yes.
Her
Destruction and
armor is
pure force, pretty much.
yep.
The armor?
So, yeah, her armor is actually really interesting because it saved her life quite a few times during the Gigantomachia,
Hmm.
the war against the giants, who are not the same people as the Titans. Those are two different people.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, just had to get that out there.
Is that easy to confuse for some people?
Oh, yeah, a lot of people keep forgetting that the giants and the Gigantomachia and the Titans and the Titanomachia are two different groups. I think the confusion comes in because they're both children of Gaia. But the giants were children of Gaia, created specifically because Gaia was very upset with the Greek with the Olympians for sealing away the Titans.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Now, Giants, that battle was quite a bit later, right?
yeah, the giants were quite a bit later.
And I'm assuming a much easier battle.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. They teamed up with Hercules, basically just stomped the giants, just ran right through them.
Poor creatures. And finally, the Shield of Athena.
Yes, the Shield of Athena, also known as the Aegis Shield. Now this is one of the most important weapons in Greek mythology because this shield originally belonged to Zeus himself. He gave it to Athena as a gift. This is an unbreakable shield that could deflect any weapon, break any curse. But most importantly, it got a major upgrade after the fight after it was given to Perseus and he slew Medusa. After he slew Medusa, Athena used her magic to imprint Medusa's head onto the Aegis. So not only was it already have all that unbreakable, any weapon formed against it
Hmm?
will shatter against it. It can turn aside any attack. But now, simply seeing the shield would turn you to stone.
So, Athena is a pretty hex goddess.
Oh yes, she is.
So, due to her being admittedly probably extremely talented in most
Hmm.
things, and being Zeus's favorite, she has a god-killing dagger. Am I correct?
Yep. Yep.
a essentially a 2-in-1 sort of auto victory weapons.
Yep. Well,
And
one is one. Yeah, well, one is victory for herself, and the
mhm,
other one is victory for anyone fighting at her side.
so even being by her side pretty much puts you in
Yeah,
good graces.
even being on her side, being on the same team as her means you're probably going to win.
And finally, an invincible shield that got upgraded with the ability of petrification,
Yes,
which in I believe in one story was even able to freeze a titan, right?
this is true. A One of the forgotten titans was who Perseus was fighting, and then apparently it was just hanging out in the sea. Perseus used Medusa's head,
Hmm.
turned it to stone.
I think I was thinking about Atlas, but that's a cooler story.
Oh, and yeah, actually, it was used on Atlas too. And thank you, I forgot about that because Heracles used it to turn Atlas. Not Heracles. Perseus used it to turn Atlas to stone. Then somehow he wasn't stone anymore when Heracles showed up. But that's just because Greek mythology is inherently contradicting.
Well, so are a lot of mythologies, to be honest.
Yeah, that's true.
Now, with Athena done, which was very impressive, we have Zeus and for Saint Seiya a lightning staff.
Now this is once again really, really interesting because there are two notes about about Zeus having a staff.
Hmm.
The first is, of course, the lightning bolt spear,
Hmm.
which is, you know, it is a spear. The thunderbolt is often either portrayed as a spear or a sword. I mean, as a spear or a staff, but it can also be used. But there's also a second staff that we see Zeus wielding, which was a symbol of his kingship. This one didn't have a name, but it was often shown in art and pictures of Zeus wielding it. It is often just called the Rex staff. Rex meaning king.
Well, that's a cool name.
That is.
Well, that's a honestly, since I don't see it a lot in media, that's a pretty deep cut right here.
Yeah, it is.
Absolutely, so that's impressive to me. And now Hades, I honestly assume this is for the most part made up, except for one thing is that Hades' invisible sword.
Now, this is really, really interesting because in Greek mythology, Hades usually does not use a
Hmm?
sword most of the time. Like 90% of the time, he would either use a bident, which is a farm tool that has two prongs, or he would use a dagger. Now, the dagger has no name, but he used it a lot during the Titanomachia. The invisibility, though, is what I want to talk about because there's only one weapon in Greek mythology that had the power of invisibility, and it is specifically tied to Hades,
It was,
and that is Hades. Oh,
I
I'm sorry.
believe, going with my limited knowledge, it was created for him in the Titan monarchy. Am I correct?
Yep, the Titanomachia. During the Titanomachia, the the three original Cyclopses created three great weapons: Zeus's thunderbolt, Poseidon's trident, and for Hades, Hades' Helm of Invisibility, which I believe is where the invisible sword comes from. The Helm of Invisibility would render Hades invisible not only from sight, but from any kind of detection, physical or magical. You could only feel his presence if you were a great god. You could feel like souls or god energy or whatever the translation says. Which I think that's where the invisibility part of his sword in Saint Seiya comes from. Now, there is one single mention of him having a sword of Adamantium. And we once again had to go back and look at my boy Perseus. Now, in the Legend of Perseus, as you remember, he was given gifts from the god to defeat Medusa. From Athena, he was given the Aegis shield because of its reflective nature. He was given Hermes' wing sandals, and he was given Hades' Helm of Invisibility. He was also given a Sword of Adamantium, but in only 1 or 2 translations that I found, they specify that Adamantium sword belonged to Hades. These are the only 2 translations I can find that mention that, but it is a pretty big clue. And because we know for a fact Kurumada loves his Greek deep cuts, I feel like he's drawing from those 2 sources, which means he just combined the helm with the adamantine sword to create the Sword of Hades in Saint Seiya.
I wish it was just called Adamantine, because again, that's a pretty cool name.
That is a cool name.
That's an awesome name. The Adamantine sword of
Yeah.
Hades.
Yes.
That's beautiful.
It is.
And we basically have 2 here, but I still start with one god, Poseidon and his trident.
Yes. Now,
probably the most iconic weapon of the gods, honestly.
Yes. Now, this one is, of course, really, really cool because it wasn't just a weapon of war. It was also a weapon of is a pragmatic weapon. It is a weapon that has a everyday use as well as a war use. It was created once again during the Titanomachia as a great weapon to fight against the Titans. It gifted Poseidon with his rule over the sea, his ability to control storms and earthquakes. But it's also a trident, so he just kind of uses it to fish, like most tridents do.
You know, I never thought about him just, I might as well just fish while I'm on here.
Exactly.
I got this thing, so why not?
Exactly.
And then there is Ares and her trident.
Yes. Now Ares's trident is a little bit harder to figure out because in Greek mythology, Ares wasn't really a fighter, but I believe it is a modification of both Ares's unfortunate role as a sort of devil-like figure, which unfortunate, but it's also a connection because Ares was originally supposed to be the one to marry Poseidon. That fell through and he ended up marrying Thetis instead, but again, I feel like Kurumada is one of those people who really loves their deep cuts, so we're like, oh, this would be
Agreed.
cool.
And I guess she's up there with Hades when it comes to Lucifer-inspired imagery being placed on her. And
yeah.
It's, oh, by the way, it's Ares, both in the movie and the manga, has a trident, so that's one thing to step on it. Is, now, I believe you also know a lot about weapons in general, right?
Yes, I do.
And Ares has what at least looks to me what I would just call a type of great sword, or just a really big old anime sword.
Yeah. So, all right. Yeah. I'm looking at it now, and it's kind of a weird looking sword if you just sit there and look at it. It's too thin for me to call it a Zweihander, but it's too long to be anything else. It is the size of him. It's a good thing he's a god. It's a good thing he's a god. But yeah, I'm gonna say it's either a Zweihander, which is a two-handed sword, because of the way the hilt looks. Like, if you just looking at the hilt itself, it definitely looks like a two-handed sword, a Zweihander. And the pommel and everything kind of supports that, and it just makes sense for it to be one. Now, in mythology, Ares didn't really have one specific weapon, because as the god of war, he was good with all weapons. Yeah. But this Zweihander, and besides, Zweihander is more of a European weapon than a Greek weapon, but it fits the whole knight, god of war theme, so it works, and we're not going to complain about it, because you can probably beat both himself.
And pretty much the last one here is, no, this, I think I missed one actually. I didn't write it down, but I'm gonna go by memory. Is Artemis and Her Staff.
Okay, now Artemis' staff is a modification of her usual weapon, the bow, But the staff was more of a walking stick, climbing stick, because as the goddess of the wilderness and forest, she'd be exploring a lot. So oftentimes in mythology, she would unstring her bow and use it as a walking stick, because she's running through the forest all the time.
Oh, interesting. And also, her warriors pretty much all use bow and arrows, so that just
Yep,
go along.
yep, because her. Oh,
That's
yeah.
it. That just goes along with the theme. Go ahead.
It does go along with the theme. That's because her and her brother Apollo shared duties as the gods of archery. Apollo, the god of the sun, sportsmanship, and archery. Then Artemis is the goddess of the hunting, the wilderness, and archery. Because back in Mycenaean and ancient Greek times, the bow was the most important hunting weapon you could have. Like they didn't like spears are great, but you don't want to get close to a boar with a spear.
And something else that actually I just thought about, but because I was looking for Apollo, but I didn't see anything. But I remembered
Mhm.
in the side story, Seiya does mention that
Right.
Apollo and another god used their arrow to defeat a giant.
Yeah, Apollo and Artemis. During the Gigantomachia, Apollo and Artemis fought this great giant, like bigger than all the rest, and they used their arrows, which were, as the god of the sun and moon, blessed with the powers of the sun and moon, to shoot him full of arrows.
Yes, and I believe he was essentially met with the same fate as
Prometheus.
was he pretty much had some kind of punishment similar?
Yeah. Most of the Titans had pretty terrible punishments. The one who we just mentioned ended up being trapped in the underworld, buried under several tons of mountain, chained and forbidden to live or die. I don't look, which I understand he rebelled against the god, but Jesus, you won't let the man
Yes.
die. But you won't let him live either.
Some do just arbitrarily get it quite a bit worse than others.
You really do.
And now actually finally her Stephanie and her Scythe.
Now, Persephone Scythe is one I'm actually excited to talk about. This one does not come from Greek mythology yet. Well, it doesn't come from mythology itself, but it does have a connection with Persephone. Persephone is a goddess of the harvest. She is the goddess of spring, the harvest, all these good things. Now, as a planting and gardening deity, she would most likely use a scythe, which is something you use to cut down wheat. While scythes have been used in anime and all this stuff for fighting, what its natural place is as a farming instrument, and a farming goddess would use a scythe. It also bears to mind her secondary title as the goddess of the underworld, because what do Grim Reapers carry?
A Scythe.
Exactly. Now, this one is actually a really inspired choice because Persephone was not now, nor has she ever been a combat goddess, but it makes total sense for that to be her weapon of choice because of both of her roles.
Yeah, so like in a scythe is like say not originally a weapon, right?
It is not originally a weapon at all,
Yes.
but it makes total sense for her to use it as one, especially in the context of Saint Seiya.
Now I guess it's random, but I may be mistaken, but Persephone is in conception technically a older character than Hades.
This is true. So here's how this works. Hades only dates back to around Mycenaean Greece, whereas Persephone has origins not only in Mycenaean Greece but in the civilizations that come before. We even have hints that her original self came from the Proto-Indo-European mythology. Now, this is really important because Hades, as a character, did not separate from Zeus until around the time the Mycenaean Greeks got started. Which means Persephone herself predates her husband as an original character. Oh.
Yes, honestly, I always thought that was probably one of the most interesting things about her is just how far back she actually goes.
Yeah, it is incredible once you look back at it. And as I mentioned before, originally it is believed that Hades and Zeus were one and the same person. This is how we get terms like them referring to Hades as Dark Zeus and Zeus of the land, and why occasionally there's so much mix up on whether Zagreus, whether Zagreus is the son of Zeus or the son of Hades, because when Zagreus' myth first got started, the two people were one and the same.
Arc Zeus, that's also a pretty fun concept right there.
It really is.
Yes. The stuff about the kids is also interesting because I'm not sure if it's officially stated that, I guess, they ever had a physical relationship. I don't know, her in Hades.
Well, they are married, so it's kind of implied.
It's assumed.
It's assumed. Plus, in some mythologies, they do have children.
Okay.
Yeah. For example, the four most famous ones are the previously mentioned Zagreus, the god of rebirth; Machaira, the goddess of blessed and heroic deaths; Melinoe, the goddess of nightmares and madness; and Plutus, who is the god of wealth. Not to be mistaken for Pluto, who is the Roman version of Hades.
And that's honestly all of them.
Yeah.
That I have right now.
That's fine.
Except even though I don't think he's not an Olympian, it is a sword that just came out recently. But I believe it's the Sword of Chrysos.
Christ. Okay, could you spell that? Is it Chrysaor?
ChrYsos.
Okay, Christ. CHY. I'm sorry. Could you?
ChrYsos.
Okay, so Christ. Okay, Chrysos.
I believe it's related to some sort of.
Okay, so this one's complicated. So Chrysos, because that's why I had to make sure you were saying Chrysos and not Chrysaor. Chrysos is his name literally means gold, so you can kind of tell what he's the god of. He is the god of gold. According to the only mention we have of him, literally only one mention of him, in the 5th century BC, we have a quick mention of him being the child of Zeus, which of course he is.
Yes.
But he was a spirit of gold that nothing could rust or devour, but everything could be corrupted and devoured by his supreme possession.
So is that a metaphor for the power of greed?
I think it's a metaphor for the power of greed. Now, I had to make sure you're saying Chrysos and not Chrysaor, because Chrysaor is a different douchebag. He is the brother of Pegasus, born from the drops of blood in that Medusa's head spilled when our boy Perseus cut her head off. The problem with Chrysaor is we're not really sure what Chrysaor looked like. Because he was either a giant boar with wings, or he was a young man with a golden sword, hence the name Chrysaor, which means golden sword. And it's kind of weird because mythology seems to go back and forth over which one he is.
Interesting.
Yeah, but yeah, Chrysaor.
Well,
go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was saying, but yeah, that's why I need to make sure, because Chrysos is one thing and Chrysaor is something else.
Well, Saint Seiya, I think there's a reference to a son of Zeus. So
yeah. Which one?
So that checks.
Yeah, it does. But yeah, that's
all right. Well, that's it.
That's everything.
Any other weapons that these particular gods I mentioned use that may not have been brought up?
Let's see. We did the trident. I mentioned Hades' bident, right?
The invisible head thing.
No, no, not,
Helmet?
not the invisible helm. Well, Hades in Greek mythology used a bident, which is a two-pronged weapon. I think I mentioned this before, but I just want to do a little bit more info on it, if that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
So the same way the trident was not only a weapon but a practical tool, the bident is too, because besides being a war weapon, it could also be used to dig up the ground, dig for treasure, and all that good stuff. Which, as a god of wealth and the underworld and the dead, makes complete and total sense for Hades to use. It's just not as cool as a sword or a invisibility helm.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, plus, it's kind of redundant looking at Zeus's spear and then Poseidon's trident, and then having Hades sitting there with a bident looks visually less interesting than having him with a sword.
Yes, pretty much. I guess is a reason why you see angels with a lot of types of weapons.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, it's just real cool.
Yep.
And well, that's it. Yeah. Any last thoughts?
I am really excited to see where Requiem continues to go from here. I really,
Yeah,
really.
because
Oh, go ahead.
go ahead.
No, I was just saying, I really, really hope the twist that I think is coming happens, but I don't know because I am not psychic.
Everybody has their own ideas, definitely.
Yeah. Other than
It
that,
is nice to see the giants get a lot of play.
oh yeah. The giant. It's especially interesting how in Requiem they put so much emphasis on the difference between um the primordial gods and the Titans, because they're making it seem like the primordial gods are so much more powerful than the than Titans and the Greek gods, which I find really interesting.
Yes, when reality is just they're just kind of older.
Yeah. It's like,
They're the boomers of Greek mythology.
yep,
And at least someone is going to use Uranus.
someone has to.
Somebody. Okay, now and uh, it, this was your idea, but a random idea that came to mind is how would I put it here? I think I was going to call it something like "Who did the best?" where we can like look at different variations of the same mythological character, and we can decide who is the best, what's the best representation out of a select mythological characters in media. What do you think?
I would love to do that. It would be really interesting to compare and contrast, say, the different versions of Hercules, the the different versions of really any character. There's so many
Any
good,
character?
yeah. There's so many good versions of so many mythological people that we can talk about.
Yes, there's lots of things we could do. We could even just straight up do like weapons or probably even armor, because I think there's a Amaterasu in Naruto.
There is an
We
Armor
can kind of compare that,
Yeah.
yes.
Oh yeah.
And
Yeah.
I don't know if it's anywhere else, but hey,
Yeah.
we can compare that.
Yeah. We can compare those two. That would be fun.
And I guess the next thing is I have to sit down and watch the movie, but what is it? The Prince of Egypt. Finally get to do that.
Oh yeah. That is a classic movie right there.
Oh yeah, I can't wait to watch it again.
Oh yeah.
I was reminded because somewhere in my notes I have after I went over a little bit of the Bible is I think I put down Moses kills a guy.
Oh, Moses does kill a guy. We have got to
Yeah.
talk about that.
Yes, and it was like really soon around like meeting God that he does that.
Yeah. It's like I want to say it's like either right before or right after. No, it's right before because that's when he leaves Egypt. It's like so. It's like right before right before the events of the burning bush. He just flat out murders a guy. I don't even think he feels bad about it in the Bible.
No, from what I read, he does not. He moves on pretty quickly.
Yeah. Yeah. We will when we both rewatch Prince of Egypt, we will talk about it and compare and contrast that. Heck, we might even talk about the difference about biblical angels, since that seems to be a meme nowadays.
Oh yes, that's the big meme. Yes, though I feel like when talking about biblically accurate angels, people pretty much stick only to Christianity.
Oh yeah, yeah.
But I guess that's the big contrast.
That is the big contrast, and that would be that's another fun
That's a
topic.
great video.
Yeah, that's another fun video. Well,
I guess
thank you.
another moment again we talk about is definitely the feeling a lot in the Bible that some of the characters like it seems like they're a bit slow. Like they do some dumb things. Like there's a point where
Oh yeah,
where Moses is talking to God. It's
they did.
like, I don't know if I'll have the right words, and God's like,
Mhm.
okay, I will literally put the words into your brain so you know what to do.
I will.
That I thought was hilarious.
That was especially just how frustrated he got with him. He's like, "You do realize I am omnipotent, right?"
Like just understand, you will be okay. You
Exactly.
got this. Well, okay. Alright. I guess you can end the stream.
Yeah.
Thank
All right.
everyone for coming. Hope you enjoyed the video and later.
Like, share, and subscribe.
Exactly. Yes, and thank you, Terry Andrews. And please
Yes.
subscribe to his channel. And buy his book.
Thank, thank you. Thank you very much.